Hey guys, hoping all is well with everyone. So in this video we're going to be continuing the read along of The Secret Zoo, Secrets and Shadows by Brian Chick. We're going to be starting today with chapter 26, but just a quick recap from the ending paragraphs of chapter 25. Noah was restless after the scouts had kind of gotten together for a sleepover in preparation for going to cross training the next morning. And Noah and the scouts had kind of looked up in the dictionary several words revolving around descend, descendant, and they just didn't make sense to the whole idea behind the descenders at the secret zoo because they were all like literary words around letters as opposed to people. So Noah's going to be going back to the grottos and kind of see if he can figure out anything else because he's too restless to sleep right now with all of these answers he's trying to find. Let's jump into it. Chapter 26. Back to the grottos. Noah parked his bike and headed to the zoo entrance. The attendant at the front booth was a bit surprised to see Noah so early in the morning, but she simply waved at him as he spun the turnstile. Being a crosser came with its privileges, Noah thought, and one of those privileges was not being questioned by zoo workers about early morning visits. He ran across the zoo grounds. The shortest path to the butterfly nets involved cutting across a series of connected paths, concrete to dirt to concrete again. All across the zoo, animals raised their heads at the commotion. Realizing that he was making too much noise, Noah slowed to a jog. As he passed the outdoor exhibits, he peered into them. They prickled with activity. At the Bear With Us exhibit, a pack of watchful black bears prowled a concrete mountainside. At Ostrich Island, a crowd of ostriches jostled for space, their blocky feathered rumps colliding. At the elephant event, several elephants roamed the yard, their trunks swinging, their ears flapping, and their ivory tusks stabbing up at the yawning sky. Noah reached butterfly nets and used his magic key to get inside. The exhibit was quiet and still. He hurried across the bridge to the clearing, slipped through the rails, and headed to where the grottos waited. When he reached the stairs, he stopped to stare down into the darkness. "Just be careful," he told himself. "Read the engravings, and get the heck out." He took one step, then another, then began to breathe in the cool air of the grottos. At the bottom of the staircase, the lights switched on. He walked down the short passage to the two branches, one left, one right, and looked in each direction. The grottos were perfectly still. He peered out at the distant metal plates, but, as before, he couldn't read them from his angle. He took a step down the left branch, and fear halted him. He remembered the butterflies and the blinding they had flown all around him, causing him to lose his bearings. He peered at the plate above the nearest tunnel. He could faintly see the engraving, but he couldn't yet read the letters. "Be brave," Noah told himself, "and be quick." He took 5 steps, fast, stopping at the mouth of the first tunnel. Above the curtain, an engraving read, "The Secret Elephant Event." He moved to the next tunnel, which read, "The Polar Pool." Then he went to the third tunnel, which read, "The Secret Koala Castle." He realized something. The name above the second tunnel was different than the other two. It was marked "The Polar Pool" rather than "The Secret Polar Pool." Why? Why was the word "secret" missing? Why had... His thoughts stopped. He heard something beyond the mouth of the fourth tunnel. Stomping. Something was headed for the gateway. A large animal. The tunnel floor trembled. Flecks of mortar skipped down the brick walls. The curtain suddenly burst inward, and a rhino plodded into the grottos. The curtain slid off its horned snout as the big animal turned in Noah's direction, pressing him against the wall. As the rhino rumbled down the tunnel, it swept against Noah, twisting and pulling him along. A second rhino brushed this curtain aside. A third, a fourth, each one on the tail end of the one before it. They either didn't see Noah or didn't care that he was there. Noah sloppily stepped sideways, trying to prevent himself from twisting in a knot. His cheeks scraped the brick wall and the front of his jacket tore open. Several feet to his right, a curtain dangled. Noah had to get it or risk being squashed. He squirmed several feet along the wall, and then he was pushed through the gateway. Water engulfed him, and Noah understood why. He'd passed through a wall of water similar to those in the water tower elevator. It was pitch black, his legs kicking. Noah twisted and turned. he lost his sense of direction and couldn't decide where the curtain was. When he tried to rise for air, he bumped his head. He swam back and forth, sweeping his arms above him, hoping to find an opening or a place to surface. Nothing. In his panic, Noah quickly ran out of breath. His heart began to hammer painfully in his chest. He finally detected a sliver of light and swam to it with all his might. Just as he reached it, the world blinked out and the pain in Noah's chest stopped. In the dark body of water connected to the grottos, Noah had passed out. Chapter 27. The Scouts Wake Up. Richie was munching on a mouthful of sugary cornflakes when Ella poked her head into the dining room. "Where's Noah?" she asked. Richie shrugged. "Haven't seen him." Milk dribbled down his chin. "He was already up when the alarm clock went off this morning." It was just before 8:30. Noah and Megan's parents were still sleeping, and Ella, Megan, and Richie were dressed and almost all ready to leave for cross-training. Ella went upstairs. Noah's bed was empty, and so was the bathroom. She headed back into the kitchen, where Richie had just loaded another spoonful of cereal into his mouth. "You haven't seen him all morning?" Richie struggled to say through a mouthful of food. "And you don't find that a little strange?" Richie stared into the corners of his eyes and considered this. Then he looked back at Ella. "Not until just now." He wiped the milk off his chin with the back of his hand. "I thought maybe he was, using the bathroom." "For a half hour?" Richie shrugged. Megan stepped into the kitchen and shook her head. She'd been looking into the basement for her brother. "Anyone check Fort Scout?" Richie asked. "Bet you anything he's out there." Megan said, "I'll go." Then she rushed out the back door. As Megan tore across the backyard, Ella squinted her eyes at Richie. A half hour. Richie shrugged a second time. Then he lifted the cereal box toward his friend. "Hungry?" Chapter 28. Troop 112 spots a paw. Shortly before the Clarksville Zoo opened at 8:30, the members of Troop 112 were lined up outside the main gates, rubbing their hands and rocking to stay warm. The troop consisted of 5 boys and a den leader, Mr. Davis. When the gates opened, the troop barreled through a turnstile and headed for Arctic Town. They reached it within minutes, the 6 of them steering through the area's exhibits, which looked like sights near the North Pole. They stopped at the polar pool. Ice-looking boulders and low rock formations lay scattered around a long, in-ground pool. Near the middle of this glacial plain sat the biggest rock formation, the size and general shape of a school bus. Just 5 feet in front of it was a long row of squarish boulders capped with a fake snow and ice. In front of those stretched the winding pool. Between the large rock formation and row of boulders was a path, a favorite place for Blizzard and Frosty to stroll. The polar pool's big attraction was an underwater glass tunnel that stretched across the width of the pool. Each end of the tunnel opened to a wide glass-walled room accessible from a flight of stairs. The troop stepped onto a sidewalk surrounding the exhibit. One of the boys stood on the bottom rail of a low steel fence and stared across the fake icy tundra. "Hey! Where are the bears?" The other kids stepped beside him, bobbing their heads as they searched for a view around the boulders. "Don't know," said a boy with buck teeth that were practically smaller than braces cemented to them. "I don't see any," said a boy with big beady glasses. "Look!" shouted a boy with orange freckles. "Over there! Behind that row of boulders! A paw! See it?" The boys began craning their necks in all directions for a better look. Though the freckled boy had partly spotted one of the polar bears, he couldn't see what it was doing. The polar bear, having just dragged Noah out of the water, was licking his face, trying desperately to wake him. Chapter 29. Noah Gets Spotted. Noah opened his eyes and peered out at a world that was hazy and indistinct, as if a fog had rolled into his bedroom. For some reason, his mother was dragging a wet washcloth over his face. When he grunted and rolled away, she didn't stop. Angered, he struggled to focus his stare. Hovering above him was not his mother, but a polar bear. What he thought was a washcloth was the bear's tongue. And Noah's bed wasn't his bed. It was a hard concrete of the polar pool exhibit. He sat up with a jolt and coughed up water. A wave of pain sloshed across his head, and the world teetered and turned around him. He held his temples until the pain subsided and the earth steadied. He stared up at the polar bear. "Frosty?" Noah asked. Frosty was Blizzard's smaller female companion. The bear tripped her head to one side and growled gently. Noah suddenly remembered what had happened in the grottos. He must have passed out in the water. Frosty had apparently discovered him and dragged him out. Now the day was bright, the sky cloudless and blue. Noah peeled back the sleeve of his jacket and read his waterproof watch. 8:37. The zoo was open. Noah glanced around. He was in the path between the big rock and the low wall of boulders. He peered out through one of the gaps and saw into the pool. The tunnel snaked through the water, each end opening into a glass room whose dim light kept the tunnel aglow. Beneath the rippling water, the tunnel seemed to swell and sway. "Frosty," he muttered, "you gotta get me out of here. Fast." The polar bear pointed her muzzle at Noah and grunted softly. Noah began to stand and stopped. Standing on the sidewalk along the exhibit were 6 people, 5 boys and a man. They were gazing into different areas near him. One of the boys, a kid with big orange freckles, stared straight into Noah's eyes. Noah dropped out of sight again. He'd barely shown himself, and only for an instant, but he knew it had been enough. Noah had been spotted. And I'll stop the video there, ending chapter 29. But as always, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video, and in the next continuation of the Secret Zoo read-along, we're continuing with chapter 30. But as always, guys, please take good care of yourselves, and I hope to see you again real soon. Thank you so much for watching.